Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the special council meeting for Wednesday, September 2nd. I call the special meeting of council to order. Mr. Jackson, introduction of late items.
Thank you, Worship. I have no late items, but I understand Councillor Kipp may have something.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Yes, I have two late items for myself. One about the select committee, and I sent an issue in about my replacement on it, and then about the adjournment of the last meeting.
Yep. Mr. Jackson, they would go where?
You could make it 4B and 4C.
4B and 4C. Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I'd like to add, as a late speaker, Mr. Leon Cake to the agenda, please.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I'm not sure if he's here, but Tim McGrath had asked me earlier if he could be added as a late delegation. So if he is, I would like to add Tim McGrath as well.
Tim McGrath, thank you. Any others? Okay, I have an additional one, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Michael Linklater as a delegation. Thank you. Can I have a motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. Seconder? Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So the first item is Colliery Dams Auxiliary Spillway Contractor Award, and the purpose is to award a construction contract to complete the auxiliary spillway at the Lower Colliery Dam. There is a staff recommendation. We won't be calling for the motion at the moment, but I'm going to read it out. That Council award the construction of the auxiliary spillway to the highest rated tenderer, Copcan Civil Limited. So we have three speakers, delegations. Councillor Bestwick. Okay. We have three speakers. The first one is Mr. Leon Cake. Thank you. You have up to 10 minutes, sir.
I won't need 10 minutes. Thank you, though. First, as everyone knows, I've been at this for 3 years, for a very long time. But today, coming in, I feel a lot of emotions when I walked into the underground parking and come up the stairs and I saw the RCMP. And I want to make a statement on what I see today with the RCMP. Good people in our community. But when I read my paper and I see over 100 daytime break-ins in the city of Nanaimo, I concern myself with why we have such law enforcement for people who care for a park. Well, I'd just like to make a statement because I know talking to the officers today and giving them a bit of a statement that I really hope our council, when we move forward from this day and all the struggles we've had with this, that we look at what we do with the RCMP in our community when we have over 100 daytime break-ins. Thank you. I'm going to speak as an independent citizen because I don't know. I'm on a select committee that, we didn't have a chair elected and we didn't get anywhere with some of the issues that we were trying to achieve before this point in time. I'd like to say that all the contractors that were selected and submitted, all good local contractors, all capable of probably doing the work. So I just want to make that statement. I have a couple of questions just to go through the mayor to staff. Has the city ever entered into a multi-million-dollar cost-plus contract with design requirements not completed in our city's history? Could I ask that question, Your Worship?
Well, technically, you're here to give us your thoughts on what we're about to do here today, sir. Not ask questions.
Not ask questions.
No, it's about you're giving us a presentation. Okay, it's not a question and answer period.
So, in order to speak to the awarding of a contract for a cost-plus situation that we've never had before, there's no questions that can be asked other than saying I accept it?
You can speak to it, sir, yes.
Well, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm asking the question if we have ever
done it before. No, you can speak to it.
So I'm speaking to it. Have we ever done a cost-plus multi-million-dollar contract in the city of Nanaimo based on design drawings not completed?
Well, we'd like to hear what your
question is,
concerns are.
Have we ever had a contract in the city like this before?
Okay. Would you like to carry on?
So I don't get an answer?
Sir, you're here to describe your thoughts and feelings on what we're discussing here today.
Okay, we're moving forward. We had a meeting at the dam today, and we went through a lot of different scenarios of what we're looking at in regards to where this is actually going to be completed and finished and done. And there's a lot of things that are still up in the air. A lot of things in regards to the permits that aren't complete yet. A lot of things in regards to the actual direction of the spillway. So in order to award this contract today, I look at this and I go, how can we award something when we don't actually have all the work completed? We have 30% of conceptual drawings that we're going to hand over and start maybe tomorrow if this gets passed. And then we're going to start to say, okay, what is it going to look like? How are we going to dig it? How are we going to build it? What do we drop? What trees are coming down? We've identified some things, but we haven't completed those identifications to exactly what it's going to look like. And of course, the comptroller has said September 1st we had to have all this in Victoria. That was the rush to do all this. Force us into this cost-plus contract, and we haven't done that. So all I'm saying today, in order to look at this contract to be awarded today, I believe that needs to be not awarded today. I believe it needs to be reviewed a little more deeper, with more drawings finished, more technical, what it's going to look like in the design, and also the community's needs. There is a really, really strong feeling about the park, about where the trees are going to come down, the direction of it. We had a good discussion today with Toby. And I think that discussion needs to go further. I think this council needs to say the community has to be heard here. I understand the comptroller, I understand the urgency, been at it for 3 years. And I'll repeat it again, hasn't overtopped in 100 years. What's one more chance going to the comptroller, and I know he's told us he'll pull the water license, but what is one more chance as a council, as all of you who are elected here, to go to Victoria and say, we hear the community, we hear what we're told to do, we hear all the information that we haven't got completed yet. Let's talk about where this should actually finish, where it should be actually completed, because November 15th is not going to get done. It will not complete. So all I'm asking today is that everyone here who makes this decision to award this gives it second thoughts on awarding something where it's an open-ended checkbook. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Tim McGrath. Not here. Next speaker is Mr. Michael Linklater. Your name and address for the record, and don't be
Michael
afraid to pull that microphone closer to you.
Michael Linklater, 3530 Ross Road, Nanaimo, BC, V9T2S5. I'm here, Your Worship, to speak to you and the Council regarding the preservation of this very important and beautiful natural asset in Nanaimo and the Harewood neighborhood in particular. The Colliery Dams Park is what we all want to save. I think that is something that everybody in this room can agree upon. It is my opinion that the award of this contract being discussed in this special council meeting is the best way to ensure the continued enjoyment of this oasis for now and for future generations. I regret the huge amount of money and remediation costs the taxpayers, including me, have to bear. But the horns of that goat should be on a previous city council, on the provincial government, and on special interest groups that have wanted to make sure that their particular perspective of resolution prevail. I support the awarding of the contract because it guarantees the preservation of the Colliery Dam, in my opinion. Again, I regret the money it costs the taxpayers, including me, but that is what it is. Continued delaying costs more money. It risks the integrity of the dam. It risks the city of Nanaimo controlling the remediation process. And worst of all, it sets neighbor against neighbor, neighborhood against neighborhood, and councillor against councillor. To do anything else but award this contract risks the award and the administration of the contract to the province. In the best case scenario, and in the worst, maybe our water rights. This issue has been hugely divisive. You don't have to look beyond this gallery to find any other evidence of that. It is a cancer, and it's growing, it's malignant, it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. It consumes council's attention to the detriment of the social and economic development of the rest of the city. Your Worship, I'm part of a large and well-established social group. As part of our activities, we walk on the beautiful seawall every Tuesday. Often we're about 30 in number. We're home-owning, tax-paying, proud citizens of the city. As we walk and after over coffee, we talk politics, we talk sports, we talk about our kids. We also talk local and provincial and federal and international issues. The overwhelming opinion that I've heard concerning the dam debate over a long period of time is that a resolution is desired, and this controversy has gone on for much, much too long. My daughter, after 6 years of university and a year of volunteer work, had to leave our beautiful city to find an opportunity. It broke my heart. What I want you guys to focus on and spend your valuable time on is the betterment of the economic opportunities and the social programs for everybody in the city. I want you to focus on jobs and opportunities for the residents and for the young in particular. Just one further note with the council's indulgence. I spent over 30 years in material management and procurement. I retired as the manager for site procurement for Ontario Power Generation, Ontario Hydro. I've written and evaluated and awarded hundreds of tenders and RFPs. My experience has taught me that a sealed tender does not necessarily, and very often doesn't support the best price. A detailed and accurate set of specifications, a strong contract, preferred contractor, and vigorous contract administration guarantees due diligence and value for money spent. In closing, I thank you, your worship and council, for your indulgence. I thank all for listening, and I thank the democratic process for allowing my view in an open and public forum on an issue of great importance. 40 years from now, our children and their children, who are the real beneficiaries of this action, will see trees regrown and a beautiful park, and they will thank those that in their wisdom saved this gem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Can I have a motion to receive the delegations, please?
So moved.
Seconded by Councillor Fuller. Thank you. So the next item up, of course, is the motion itself. The motion is that Council award the construction of the auxiliary spillway to the highest rated tenderer, Topcan Civil Limited. And can I have a mover, please? So moved. Seconded. Thank you. Speakers, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Unless the mover or seconder would like to speak before I do. No. Thank you. As we all know and understand all too well, there's been considerable dialogue and emotions generated. What we can't forget is that this council unanimously voted and approved an auxiliary spillway to be constructed. The manner in which we get there to the end result now is a process that will involve awarding of a contract. The award of this contract, regrettably, in my opinion only, is a cost plus or an open-ended. But that said, because of the time constraints that have been placed upon us, which we won't meet, requires us to advance some decisions as it relates to this item and this topic. I am on record of being opposed for several years. As a council, again, I'll just remind you that we voted unanimously to put the auxiliary spillway in the dam to preserve the dams, to save the park in the least expensive, least invasive manner possible. It is not possible to be inexpensive. It is not possible to be without invasive tracking of where the pathway, the auxiliary course is going to go. So it all comes down to balance, given the fact that we voted unanimously for an auxiliary spillway. My colleagues on council and know that I've sent auxiliary spillways and other forms of water diversions from the Pacific Oceans, from islands, from residences that are far less in size and scope than what we're being asked to do for our little ponds. I find that very regrettable. But that said, I do know that we need to move on. This cannot stay where it is forever. I'll be supporting the motion with a friendly amendment. Because my concern now, quite simply and quite frankly, is that we get the job done least expensive, least invasive, without cause for harm from our provincial government to legislate something against our fair city. So the friendly amendment that I'd like to make to my colleagues is that, I'll just read the motion, that Council award the construction of the auxiliary spillway to the highest rated tenderer, Copcan Civil Limited, and that prior to any on-site work commencing, including all permits, that Council be provided with an opportunity to review the auxiliary spillway course and confirm it is the least expensive and least intrusive. That is a friendly amendment, one that I believe to be fair, responsible, reasonable, and respectful of the process. I know that COPCAN is on a cost plus. I'd like to think that there's been considerably more work done on the detailed design drawings that will allow them to be a little bit more drilled down into what those estimates and ultimate costs will be. And so just for the record, I'll just read the friendly amendment one more time, that prior to any on-site work commencing, that Council be provided with an opportunity to review the auxiliary spillway course and confirm it is the least expensive and least intrusive.
Your Worship, I request that those be voted upon in seriatim. There's two parts to the motion.
So a friendly amendment at this point.
Well, the friendly amendment would be fine, except that I would want it voted in two separate.
Of course, the first thing we need is you're moving that. We'll need a seconder for the amendment. Councillor Hong, thank you.
So may I respond to that? So Councillor Brennan, do you mean the two parts being that Council award the construction of the auxiliary spillway to the highest rated tenderer? That's
Yes.
part one?
Yep.
And then of course part two is a friendly amendment.
Well, part two would be voted on as well.
But
Because in my view, it's not a friendly amendment. It changes the purpose of the motion. So I would like to see them voted on separately.
Mr. Jackson.
Sir, just for clarity, Councillor Bernard, are you referring to Councillor Bestwick's amendment in two parts? Or is Councillor Bestwick's amendment one part?
Yeah, it would be one part. His
Okay.
amendment would be one part in that it has two steps to the motion now.
So now would be a question if this is moved as an amendment. And, it is moved, it is seconded
As an amendment.
as an amendment. Yes, Your Worship.
So then would you propose as a friendly to that, to separate them into two? You can't do that?
No, it's clear that it is one amendment.
you have to defeat
Thank you.
it.
It's one amendment, but it makes two questions in the motion. So I don't think it's actually friendly. I think that we should vote on the amendment then.
I think procedurally we have to vote on the amendment, do we not? So we can defeat the amendment.
It's been challenged, so therefore now there is a vote required, yes.
Okay.
And it's been moved and seconded.
So call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Oh, pardon me. Councillor Kipp.
Clarification, please. Thank you. Councillor Bestwick, if I can, through to Councillor Bestwick, what you're saying here is prior to the actual site being selected, because there's a bit of waiver in there as we met on site today with some people who were there, that there would be no grubbing, no tree removal, no other than investigation if they needed to do an environmental core sample, if they needed to do a test drill hole for the Councillor Fuller's request of moving it within 5 meters. Is that what you're suggesting? And nothing would start to be removed until the actual location was pinned down exactly. Because if I refer to the August 30th email from from staff, I'll just say from staff, there was a whole bunch of issues and location was one of those. So is that your purpose, to not have everything grubbed out and then find out something was moved?
Yes, the purpose is to ensure that the pathway chosen is the least expensive, least intrusive, and that no work commence on site until such time as council receives that confirmation. To date, I don't have specificities to what options have been presented or not, and whether or not we have chosen the least expensive, least intrusive. And to me, that's always been a game changer. It's always been conditional on the decision that is to be rendered. We're moving forward, we're moving toward, we all know that the auxiliary spillway is going to the southwest side of the existing spillway, looking east. We know that. Now I just want to ensure that it follows the least expensive and least invasive pathway. And I don't want to get into a debate or anything right now, but of course there could be balance there. We might find out that the pathway is somewhat longer, an alternate, but far less invasive. Then we need to balance on, is it worth that alternate location? And it may be.
Follow up, Your Worship. I'm sitting on the Colliery Select Committee, and the last meeting we had was last Monday at 1 o'clock, and there was no quorum available. But recommendations were coming from individuals on that committee to have it brought forward that this type of no grubbing, no tree removal until the actual specific center point of the spillway determination is finalized. And that was coming from, I know, different people within the committee, but it never hit the floor because there was no quorum, and it never got recommended to council from that committee. So I support what Councillor Bestwick is. I'm in a quagmire here. I understand I don't want to see the work started before we really have design, but my concerns with this type of contract is still there. So I think it's a tough one for me to vote on any of this in an affirmative manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, I have the same feelings as Councillor Kipp on this. This is a tough one. I voted against Cost Plus, and if that motion stands alone from the friendly amendment, I will continue to vote against it. I like the friendly amendment. I can see that working for us. The goal here isn't to not do anything. It's a given. We've agreed as a majority to do something. To proceed with grubbing, taking out trees, etc., before we even know where the spillway is going to go, before we even have those detailed design drawings, to me seems ludicrous. It just opens it up to clearing and then go, whoops, it's in a different location. Maybe we'll clear over here now too. So there's lots of stuff that goes on. I like the amendment and would be willing to support the combined motion. I will not support them as separate motions.
Thank you. Mr. Swaby.
So, Your Worship, I just want to make sure there's clarity around, because I've heard it a couple times now. We do know where the location is. We have provided that, and we have certainty on the center line of the spillway. And that is what the design, based on Council's direction, has been working towards to provide for the contractor to get on with the work. So that location has been known. Yes, there's other locations. Mr. Seward toured the site with several councillors this morning, identified that the alternatives are about 300,000 to $500,000 more, I think is what Mr. Seward estimates. So we don't have that kind of detail. To get that kind of detail for council in a manner in terms of design that would satisfy you, I can assure you that we will not make the deadline. So I think that that has to be considered when you make this vote, that varying from the direction you gave us, which is to proceed with the design and the center line that we were establishing, will not meet the deadline of the province.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I address Mr. Swaby's question or ask him a question?
Certainly.
Thank you. Can you please tell me 100% of what trees will be removed with the exact design drawings? Because as I gathered from today, it was still up in limbo.
Your Worship, as we discussed out on site, there is a plan showing all the trees on the proposed auxiliary spillway design that's in place as is. The trees within the actual dimension construction are well identified. The trees in the construction zone each side of the auxiliary spillway are not conclusively determined as yet, and therefore it all depends on the construction conditions we find out there. If we can save those trees and save the root structures, then they of course will remain. So no, we don't have 100% confirmation of how many trees, but we certainly have a very close estimate of it, and you saw that out on site today.
Okay, great. And follow up with that, if we were to change the path as we had discussed earlier today, would some more trees be saved? Would the path drastically change in the time frame that is required for us to investigate what trees would be removed? How would that affect our timeline is, I guess, what I'm getting at.
Well, we can certainly go alternate routes. There's no question. There's many ways to determine this. But it will be additional time and cost. And as Mr. Swaby mentioned, and I think one of the people on site mentioned today, is we'll possibly be looking at the $300,000 to $500,000 range to determine if we could save 15 additional trees. Was the general comment there? That's an estimate at best, but that's what we're dealing with. More time, more cost to save a certain amount of trees.
Okay, thank you. And to follow up with that is, what stage are we now with regards to construction drawings and design that we're moving forward with? Because I would like to know at what point and percentage-wise can COPCAN come in and actually start construction work?
Certainly. Is that we're having a report from Golder on Friday that will be put on our website, sent to Dam Safety, and of course forwarded to you, which will give an update on that. The actual design location, as Mr. Swaby said, is set and is established right now for the design they're working on. Now they're working on the specifications, how you physically construct that, issues such as soil conditions, seepage of water, how the labyrinth weir and the box culvert are going to be located. So they're working on all those details, but the actual physical footprint of the auxiliary dam is established at this time unless it's changed. If it is changed, then we will have to dig again, do more testing to determine if the new location is founded on the same soils, and reevaluate that in conjunction with reevaluating which trees would come down.
So when would COPCAN start with this design drawing is what I'm asking you?
Yes,
if we
they're proposing to start September 15th, and with the goal of be substantially complete by November 15th. So they're planning to be on site approximately that date, provided council gives that direction today.
And what percentage of drawings would that be?
As I say, I will get an update from Golder on Friday, but it's not a form of percentage as yet. It's getting the details in place towards 100% design. But we won't be there until 100% design of the whole product until into October, because the design by Herald Engineering on the structural components will take that much longer, because they can't finalize the construction components until the excavation has been completed.
Okay, so with regards to Councillor Beswick's amendment, we technically still have a little bit of time for council to go and look at it, because if we still award this, they don't start until the 15th. Am I not mistaken?
So can I clarify on that? Is following the motion amendment that I heard, is there would be discussion on the final location once Golder could provide multiple options of the final location. That would take at least 4 to 6 weeks. Again, soil testing, many other components, we're into a much extended timeline if we proceed with the amendment as brought forward.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Okay. This keeps getting more and more interesting every time I listen to it. One of my favorites throughout this is we can be assured we will not meet the deadline if we do this. Well, I'm pretty assured right now we have not met the deadline as it stands. So to say that, we've already not met the deadlines. So to me, that is immaterial. That's just to me. That's the way I read it. You read it differently. Councillor Hong asked about them starting work. If we approve the motion as it stands without the amendment, if you go to page 3, you will see September 1st. Successful contractor is notified and plans to mobilize on site and commence clearing and grubbing. So the work would start, and it would start almost immediately. We hear about additional time and cost. Sure, this may take some additional time. For me, it's worth it to get it right. If we have to do this, and I hate the fact we are having to do this, then let's try and get it right. It could cost $300,000. I would follow that up with, it could also cost less. Could is a very vague word, and we have been given these words throughout this whole process. Nothing has been totally set in stone. Nothing has been said, this will cost more. This will cost less. This will do this. This will do that. It's always been this could, it should, it might, maybe it will. So as I say, I will not accept the first motion as it stands. However, with the friendly amendment, I will regrettably agree.
Councillor Kipp.
Oh, thank you. This is, I'd like a question through the staff. September 1st, what was due to the comptroller? Detailed drawings and design. And I'll expand my question, or my insight here, is that who is preparing this is Golder and Harold, I understand, are preparing those detailed design. Am I correct? Yes. Yes. So by this rush to sign COPCAN has nothing to do with the September 1st deadline. And I think it's a bit of a fallacy to think that COPCAN signing, the only thing COPCAN can do, I've heard, is to the comptroller to prove we're doing something. We're hiring a contractor. We're moving forward. So we're facilitating the comptroller. But Harold and Golder have been working on our designs. August 10th, they had 30% done. And today is September 2nd. So, and I haven't seen another drawing. I haven't seen another sketch. I haven't seen another pretty picture, as my friend Lloyd would say. So for me, this seemingly again that COPCAN had to have a special meeting today because we didn't release his contract or the contract to them has nothing to do with the Golder design, does it? Does it? Or is it just that they can add expertise? And they can add expertise. They can come in once they're getting paid and offer the city expertise. Well, I had a company, GSI, that offers us a bunch of expertise for free. So this concerns me. We're hiring landscapers from Golder when we have landscape professionals in our city of Nanaimo. We have tree specialists in our city of Nanaimo that we pay under our staff. But these are in these contracts. So can staff really tell me that this whole special meeting today to get COPCAN, is it just to facilitate Mr. Davidson that we're moving forwards to? Is that what that is? Well, because really, COPCAN, you said September 15th, the contract says something a little different. If you said September 15th, we don't have to award this till September 15th. Because I heard that it wasn't going to start till September 15th. So can I have that answer?
So, Your Worship, the answer from me is that Council directed us to build the spillway and comply with the provincial order. this is the way that you do it.
Okay, can I
This is
respond
our
to that?
recommendation on how to get on with doing
That
it.
goes to Councillor Bestwick, unanimous motion that I was part of. And it had a whole bunch of parts that were never, I ever thought there was to be a priority. And investigation and all that is ongoing, I hope. So I voted to move a whole bunch of things forward, and it didn't meet my needs on it. So the Golder Herald design, which had nothing to do with COPCAN, other than COPCAN will review it with them now when they get the award and they'll get the money. Again, the process seems odd to me. It's my own personal one on this. So I've heard tonight that by this delay we've talked about, delays cost more. Well, a bunch of years ago now, we were going to tear the dams out. And as far as our water rights, staff had said, tear those dams out, get rid of the water. So staff didn't care about the water rights then when they thought it was going to collapse. So now I hear water rights. Well, we're all worried now about water rights. Well, I am worried about the water rights. So, and my daughter lived in Europe. She works in Vancouver. For me, part of that's just life. And yeah, and I was a small town. It's hard to keep people here, and I want to keep employment here. I'm glad we hired local people. Cost plus, for me, tough one. So the committee asks for Councillor Bestwick's part that we're talking on here. They would like that, not to tear the park out until we really know. On the 30th at 20:35, I have a letter from our staff that is going over preliminary design showing the proposed auxiliary spill location with final location to be established once drill holes have been completely analyzed. Multiple factors have been considered by Golder to determine the final location, including location of inlet, outlet structure, minimizing water seepage through the plug, embankment between the reservoir and weir, determining shortest route, impact on cost, tree removal, landscape design for finished product, bridge box culvert location, working with WorkSafe, angle of repose. The last one, the final location, there's other paragraphs in here, where Golder was even asked about moving the spillway and looking at it, but they didn't know it was because it was longer, it was more expensive, which isn't always true. They did not encounter rock until much deeper than expected. Thus, the weir and box culvert will likely have to be located on soil with anchors through to the rock. 50 feet down, I understand, is the dirt. We don't know any of that today. Herald and Golder, I haven't seen the design other than I hear the concrete structure is designed. But the actual dirt it's going to sit on hasn't been determined. So I think Councillor Bestwick has a great motion. It should have been friendly, as it's, I think it's something bargaining between this fighting staff. There was a bit of a bargain there from him, and it's not accepted. So from my point of view, if it's a separate motion, I vote in good idea on that. But, you know, we've got permits from the federal government on navigable water and how this dam would affect it. And I'm just really confused why I would even spend time on that. So I'm sorry if I'm rambling here. It's daytime work hours, but the final location of the spill will involve a trade-off between tree removal and cost. No one route will save most of the trees. Council will receive further design drawings as you develop. Please contact me to provide further information. That was the 30th. That was the day before our last meeting at 20:35 at night. And this is too confusing for me. Even my little brain can't take this.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, a call a question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Let the record show Councillor Brennan, Mayor McKay, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Thorpe opposed. Motion defeated. Down to the main motion. It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor?
No contract!
Do we get to speak to it, or?
Can we?
Pardon me. Speakers to the main motion.
Thank you.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I'm disappointed that the friendly amendment was defeated. I understand that's the democratic process, and so I won't be running out of the meeting. But I am extremely concerned that without the specificities of what is so important to know, because things have changed so many times. We started with a 1 in 34,000. We're now being told that things are 1 in 200. We are building the capacity of this spillway to, in my opinion, to be much larger than it needs to be. And since day one, it's only been trying to save as much of the pristine park that we have. And I started with that, with voting against anything to do with any additional spillway, because the one that we have is fine, thank you very much. And those sentiments, I think, were echoed by many people sitting at this table at one time or another. Do we need to proceed with the award of a contract? The project's going forward. The project is going to happen. I don't like this project going forward in its current form any more than anybody else does. And you can probably appreciate that we're going to be sitting here, just like we just did, with motions being not passing, and we'll find ourselves in another conundrum. And I'm sure the majority will know where the blame will be pointed should that happen. I'm going to vote in favor of COPCAN, and I'm going to put all of my trust, all of my faith, everything that I own on the professional advice and professional experience that guides this city. All of my will be in the hands of other people than me to keep this project on or under budget and least expensive and least invasive, period. And if that means one tree is saved, great. And I will leave that up to all of our professionals that lead us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I think people know where I'm going to vote on this. Councillor Kipp read a very interesting letter we received on the 30th. There is nothing. We have nothing. We have some conceptual drawings. We do not have detailed drawings. They don't even know where. They say we are going to build a spillway in one location, but the letter says there's opportunities for other locations. That letter was very clear. There's nothing written in stone on this, and there shouldn't be anything written in stone on this. However, if this motion passes, the one thing written in stone will be the proposed schedule. And that includes on September 1st, can't happen now, but it could happen on September 3rd, the successful contractor is notified and plans to mobilize on site and commence clearing and grubbing. Commence clearing and grubbing. How they can do that without knowing the proper location is beyond me, but this will allow them to. I will not support this motion as it stands.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp. Councillor Kipp. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question of staff. Have we ever awarded a cost-plus contract before on limited design?
Your Worship, not to my knowledge. I do know that the regional district just issued the same contract for the outfall on a cost-plus. So same kind of process. That eliminated one of the contractors from our bidding.
I voted on that out of the RDM because it's an emergency. Your Worship, what happens now as the contract is somewhat different than the 15th date of the 1st? What happens now with late charges? We have a deadline, November 15th, 95% substantial completion. The person knew that coming in, taking this contract that we're voting on currently. Is there late charges? And so typical 10,000, 25,000 a day if they're late. Do we have that built in?
Yeah, there's no late charge. There's no late charges built into the contract.
Okay, thank you. So we have a date, deadline, but no late charges. Okay. Substantial completion, 95% of what? Concrete, ditch, or riparian area? And with that, what is our riparian actions? I understand we don't require a development permit, but we have to live to all of the other riparian rules that we place on development?
That's correct, and we're working with our consultants to address those issues as we progress through the process.
Okay, thank you. I hear the thing of do nothing, but that's not true. I've even offered up berms and GSI and hardening, so I've never in my life ever said do nothing. The dams needed to be fixed. They needed to be monitored years ago, and I'm hoping we're getting to that now and getting flow. So from my perspective on this, we don't know substantial completion. The August 30th from our city liaison and head on this has said that we still have a lot of confusion. Golder and Herald, we're working on the design. I don't know why COP can, other than if they're an Nanaimo company, they could offer expertise now ahead of it. I understand they even offered different forms of employment when they talked about our First Nations or whatever. So there's all sorts of different things. I'm a little concerned that we're hiring a company when we have landscape architects on our staffing. And they're in parks. They're in a park, and our Parks and Rec isn't even involved. So that bothers me on giving an awarded contract without any Parks and Rec involvement. And tree specialists. I know they're there and they're going to watch, and so we're paying kind of double up costs on this. So a cost plus on limited design. Our oversight is not an engineer, I don't believe. We just have a staff person is overseeing this. We have unit prices, I believe, and some of that. I haven't seen any of it. I haven't seen any valuations. I didn't hear the 3,000 or 4,000 more. I think that's just a guess, and it's unfair for them to say just because it's longer, it's more expensive. That just doesn't always cut it. I mean, if I build a 13-foot room, I got to cut a foot off a 14-foot board, so it doesn't make it cheaper. It's actually better to build the 14-foot room because it is cheaper. So I cannot support a cost-plus contract with limited design rushed by a subjective, arbitrary deadline by someone that considers himself a senior government. I just can't operate that word. We heard today number of crimes in Nanaimo in the daytime when we have police. I haven't seen the comptroller in front of talking to the public or their Liberal representative, Mrs. Stillwell, who was worried about the furry animals at the SPCA thing, but not about the downstream mitigation of our public, because this doesn't do anything but downstream mitigation. So I can't support it.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Worship. I had coming into this with serious concerns until Councillor Bestwick had brought forward his amendment. I was up there at the park. I was hopeful that his amendment would have given me some assurances, a path, and the trees that would be saved that would be less impacted. I didn't have a problem awarding the contract. I wanted some insight for all of us so we can feel warm and fuzzy inside that what we're doing to the park is the least invasive and the most cost-effective way of getting it done. I can't vote strictly on this without this warm, fuzzy feeling that I want inside. Yes, they're professionals. They don't need to start right away. All Councillor Bestwick's amendment was just that. Ensure that they do not start right away. They can still get it done on time. But assurances for us, what we're doing and how much we're spending on this park is the best option. Maybe Mr. Seward's path from Golder is the best one. So be it, if that's the case. But the amendment was about them not starting until it was clear until that we had drawings, the test holes, the results that they had shown to us that this is what is going to work. This is the best option. Having CopCam come in there and saying, yeah, you know, if we brought a digger in there that's a little smaller, we could save the roots on this tree. And giving us an assurance before they started, walking through with us saying, well, we could save this one. This tree has a 60% chance of survival, as opposed to us doing nothing right now without giving them express concern that we as council are concerned. We know we're going to do this stuff to the park. We want CopCan to understand that, hey, can you guys just take a little time, have a little look, see what you guys can do. You're still getting the contract. It's still a cost plus, but a little bit of assurance for us and the community that this is the best that we're going to do. It might cost a little extra. We don't know. What's there to decide on a tree that's been there for over 100, 200 years? What's that tree worth? Yeah. So what is that going to be worth to us, and how long is that going to grow? Yeah, we talked about our children and our, enjoying it. Well, I don't want them to enjoy shrubs. I want them to enjoy trees. I hope that the second growth trees, as Councillor Brannan mentioned, get bigger and bigger so that my kids, my grandkids, can all wrap around their hands around a tree and still not be able to reach it. That would be great. I would love to see that. And if we can save the trees with this amendment, it didn't say anything. All it said was award them the contract. Hey, but don't start. Can you give us some assurances so we can feel warm and fuzzy inside? And that's all what his was, the amendment. And that's what it seemed like. It seemed logical. Do they really need to start, according to Mr. Seward, it's the 15th that they need to get in there? Well, so be it. Come before council on the 14th. You're the professionals. You're hiring the professionals. Show us what you can do to try to save these trees. That's all we needed. That's all this motion was about. They still got the award. It was just an assurances for us, for the people out there, that they are going to do the best that they can. And that's all we wanted. They still had the contract. We were still going to move ahead. If they came to us and said, sorry, guys, this tree's got an 80% survival. We're just going to take it out. Okay, I can live with that. But tell us, give us the information, the update that we request. Be honest with the people so that they can feel comfortable with what is happening. At this point, we don't know. Like Mr. Seward said, well, maybe they're going to take this tree out. Well, we don't know. Well, I would like to know. And get them in there, have a look. See what it's going to do. Get the professionals, give us a 100%. They know their machines. Oh, it's 13 feet wide. Well, it's only 12 feet wide here, so we're going to have to take this tree down because we can't fit through it. Let the people know. Be honest with them. And that's what I hope that this motion was to address. That was it. Plain and simple. They still had the contract. And that's what I wanted to see, is assurances from them that they're going to do the best that they can. I hope they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick up for a second time. I'm just wondering if we've got anything new to add to the recommendation that council award the construction of the auxiliary spillway to the highest rated tenderer. Do we have anything new to add, or can we call the question?
I'd like to, if I may.
Go ahead.
I'm here for one item and one item only, so I think that's relevant. Just to Councillor Hong's point that when CopCan is awarded, ultimately the contract, they won't come in and change the routing of the spillway. They'll come in and perform the work as it's been prescribed for them to undertake. And so they won't be coming in saying, hey, I think we should hang a quick left here by 15% and then go straight again, and that's not to save that tree. So that's not what they'll be doing, I don't believe. I believe that they'll be coming in and with their expertise and here's the scope of work that needs to be done, and here's the boundaries in which here's how deep we're going, and here's how wide it's going to be, and here we go. That's just on that point. I stand to be corrected, of course. I was at some of the meeting this morning, and I didn't hear, maybe I missed it, I could have. I didn't hear the number identified as $300,000 to $500,000 more for an alternative location. So I would have to default to those that were there longer than I, that may or may not have heard that. So I would do wish that I heard it this morning. And my question to staff is, this is my last question, is that when was this specific location chosen? And was it chosen on merits weighted against other options? Or was this the option and only option that Golder and Herald have been proceeding on since, and I think the date is July 8th. I could be wrong. Once again, I stand corrected. They've been working on one spillway location only, and I have to assume if it is the least expensive and least invasive, that they would know that because they weighted it against option B, C, or D.
Your Worship, I can respond to that. Wishes? Certainly the auxiliary spillway concept was brought up originally by Golder in February of this year in concept. Much later on July 6th, Council directed us to engage Golder to look at options with the auxiliary spillway. They brought back 3 options, which staff recommended one of those options, the least expensive of those options, which is the Labyrinth Weir box culvert design that you've seen in place. And they've been working to that design ever since Council's direction was to proceed with the auxiliary spillway. So that's the spillway that Council gave us direction to work on. The second comment is COPCAN's involvement here. The process we're working with is generally called an early contractor involvement process, in which they would come on site. They will work with our construction crews and our engineers to determine the best way to build this in the most effective manner. Consistent with what Councillor Hong said, if there's discussion about saving a tree, they'll certainly be a participant in that discussion. So it's a huge advantage to have them involved at this early stage and move forward. I would like to clarify the September 1st versus September 15th issue. They're both in this report, as you see. And yes, the intent would be for COPCAN to start moving on site, but realistically to physically have all their machinery and ready to work, it's September 15th. They may be on site the week before, next week, but most likely it's then. But they have about a 10-day process of planning, staffing, bringing equipment on, bringing material on, and that takes that period of time. So we can't make a decision on September 15th to go with them, because then we lose another 10 to 12 days for them to mobilize. So that's why there's the difference between September 1st and September 15th.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt. You meant to stay on.
Yeah, because I'd like to continue my conversation with Mr. Seaver.
Can we go through the speakers list?
I'd like to do it while I'm fresh on our points.
But you withdrew from the speakers list, Councillor Bestwick.
I didn't realize I was still on the speakers list, so I hit my button. It took me off accidentally. So if I could deal with Mr. Seward on his response to my questions, I'd appreciate that.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Mr. Seward, I don't disagree with your response that Council directed the auxiliary box spillway on July 6th. But my question, which wasn't answered, is the siting, the location. Yes, we agreed to commence unanimously with an auxiliary box spillway. Did we define the location? And that was my question. Was this location chosen, weighted on one or two or three options, not what type of labyrinth spillway we were going to use, but where it was going to be located. And I don't know that we ever did that, and you did not, and with all deference, no disrespect, you did not answer my question how we arrived at that siting that we've arrived at today, because we didn't have presented to us options based on expense. We have one option, as I understand, where this spillway is going to go. And that was my question. Did we have two or three options? And did we examine those two or three options to arrive at this one?
I'm not aware of council looking at the specific siting. They didn't question us on that time. The Golder report included the three different options and showed the location of those options. So did council look and pinpoint one particular route? No.
Were three, not the
So, Your Worship,
not the type of
the answer is
labyrinth.
no. The answer
There was
is
three
absolutely no.
types of labyrinths that we voted on that was recommended. I'm talking specific to the siting of what we chose.
Yeah, your answer is no. And in
Thank
fact,
you.
we couldn't, at the time when this was proposed, we couldn't get any uptake on doing this. And now we're in, and I agree with you, now we're in this position where we don't have time to do anything. So we have not done anything except relied on Golder, who established, in his opinion, the best location to provide the auxiliary spillway. We're in a position now where we don't have the time to do reviews of various options of the spillway. And
So-
that's just fact of the matter of how we got to where we are.
Best location based on distance, based on depth of soils that needed to be removed, rock that may or may not have needed to be blasted, pinning of the cavity itself with the concrete, the slope that was naturally, the grade that was natural versus unnatural, the amount of flora, fauna, trees, et cetera, that would be removed or otherwise. So I don't know if I were to walk in there and say, well, I just want to find the shortest route. It doesn't really matter to me what I don't live here. I live in Vancouver. I don't care. My job is to get the shortest route done as expediently, as quick as I possibly can. And so this is the best route.
Certainly, Golder took in consideration the removal of trees as well. That they have a landscape architect on this project, and they're considering that, and they're also considering how this would be best replanted once it's complete.
And Your
Did
Worship,
they entertain the existing trailway that currently exists?
And Your Worship,
Did
the other issue is that in order to establish different routes, it's $20,000 a day to drill. They established the route they thought was the best based on all the factors that Mr. Seward talked about. And they brought a driller again and established how deep the soils were, what would need to be pinned, because you can't establish how wide the spillway is going to be until you know what the configuration of the soils and potential rock are. And that's what they did. And that's what I'm saying to you, is it would be great to have lots of opportunity to review all sorts of options, bring another drill rig in for weeks and establish all the different routes, but we don't have the time. We are where we are, and in terms of moving forward to meet the deadline, this is the route that's chosen.
Thank you. And the deadline, quite frankly, is a mystery. The deadline is not going to be satisfied. And when the Dam Safety Branch gave us until September the 1st to submit the detailed design drawings, they knew that there was no chance in hell that this thing would be substantially complete in November by allowing us until September 1st to submit detailed design drawings.
Councillor Pratt.
Well, if there's nothing new, I'd like to call the question.
Question's been called.
Actually, I had something new.
My question wasn't answered about 95% completion with a concrete ditch riparian.
Mr. Jackson, can you assist with once the question's been called?
Well, it's up to the mayor, and you can conclusively say when the question's been called. However, that is subject to appeal. But you can call the question.
Yeah. Thank you. So, as we have three speakers, we're just going to carry on. Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Okay, mine's quite simple. If this motion is defeated, I will bring forward another motion, and if that motion too is defeated, I give up and say we let them try and sue the crap out of us and we fight it until we die. Thanks.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Just to Mr. Seward's point, it's not about starting on the 15th. It was giving us time for them to investigate. I just wanted an assurance on when they were actually going to start with Councillor Bestwick's motion. I don't have a problem with awarding the contract. I don't want them there tomorrow starting grubbing the trees, getting their way in. I wanted them to do some investigation to see what the best option was. And I thought that's what Councillor Bestwick's amendment was. It was just not to not award the contract. It was to award the contract and giving them time, us time, and them to investigate. It was just an assurance. That's all it was, that they're not going to start until they had to start, until they got the best options possible, instead of making a mistake like we discussed. Oops, took this tree out by accident. Didn't really need to do that, because we could have done it better this way. And that was all that Councillor Bestwick's motion was, and that's why I supported it, and that's what I wanted to see. I'm sure they're going to do it anyway. I hope that's the best practice for a local firm, and I hope they're watching this and listening to our concerns. But Councillor Bestwick's motion, just put it on paper. That was it. It was not to vote for this. It was just to get us an assurance that they're going to do what they can to protect the trees.
So, Your Worship, I think is fundamentally different. I don't think, Councillor Hong, you're interpreting Councillor Bestwick's motion correctly, and I would welcome his input. The motion was actually to investigate other options for routes. Once we hire a contractor, the contractor is hired to perform based on the drawings that are provided. Those are the only drawings we have in the current location. What Councillor Bestwick was asking for was alternatives to be investigated. And I'm telling you that in order to investigate alternative routing locations, it's going to, yes, take money, because we're going to have to drill, we're going to have to do design, we're going to have evaluations done. And secondly, it'll delay the project and we will not be able to meet the deadlines of the comptroller.
I thought Mr. Seward said that the reason we bring this contractor in early is so they can collaborate and figure out what needs to be done.
I think you're talking about minor adjustments, which the committee is working on in terms of minor adjustments to the routing that's been established already in terms of how we can protect trees.
Yes, and I agree with that, and I'm willing to live with that. I'd want that on paper. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
Substantial completion, I asked what it was. Is that the concrete poured, the ditching done, the excavation repairing? It's supposed to be 95% in the contract. What is substantial completion of this project?
I think it's been stated before, substantial completion would be what's determined by the controller. He and his legal people have stated to us substantial completion.
So it's up to the individual, the comptroller, Mr. Glenn Davidson, to make that determination of what is complete?
Yes, Your Worship, substantially complete has to be deemed to be operational, I would presume. And once we're in construction, of course, then we'll have to deal with this. But we had to work backwards from the date of November for the deadline with the contractor, and that's why September 1st, in terms of issuance of the contract, was so important. The longer that's delayed, the less likely that we're going to be in a position to provide the province with substantial completion.
Thank you.
Councillor Pratt.
Looks like Councillor Bestwick wants to say something else. I was going to call the question.
Just a question to our staff. Has Golder or Herald previously submitted design drawings with locations for this spillway to potentially be sited?
Sited in locations different than the siting now?
Yes.
No, they haven't submitted drawings different from what the siting that they proposed in the drawings, I believe, submitted July 8th.
So the only drawings that we have that have been submitted are site-specific to this site only.
Yes.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Let the record show that Councillor Fuller, Kipp, and Hong are opposed. Motion passes. Next item. Councillor Kipp, you had next item?
Yeah, Your Worship, regarding the select committee, when the committee was struck, I was requested by some of the people to sit on the committee. I find myself
in a massive moral dilemma about this. I have been, the process from my concern back in as far as 2007, I've had concerns with this process of our water and our water systems, the planning, emergency planning we do. Even when I was a disaster manager, I had problems with how their water branch was moving. So for me to sit on this committee and try and bring forward a solution that I believe is flawed. So I asked a week or so ago, and I understand through the staff that I asked to be taken off the committee and have it put on the last agenda, which would have been last Monday. And I didn't even get an email back. So I'm doing it here. I want off the committee because I'm in a dilemma with it. I don't agree with how it's being organized, how it started, how it gets support. Whatever happens, I think the committee is not capable of doing its job. It's going through a motion, but I don't think it's really action-oriented because of the way it's been put here. So I'm in total opposition to that committee. So I've asked to be removed from it, and I wish when I sent an email, at least you'd send that you've received it. And staff told me they weren't told to react to it. And just as a counselor, when I send something in, I'm doing it for a reason. So I want to be taken off that select committee for the Colliery Dam. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Brennan.
Hearing that, I would move that Councillor Kipp be relieved of his duty on that committee.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'd like to speak to
discussion. Councillor Fuller, or I'm sorry, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you.
Okay, so now obviously we're going to need a motion to put a new to appoint a new
Well, I
member.
think you have to vote on that motion to relieve him of his duties.
All those in favor? Councillor Bestwick? You wish to speak to the motion?
Yes. What I would like to do, because this is frankly appointments and committee appointments, and typically when we do these things, we do them, if you will, in camera, and then we bring out the information out. So I'd like to take the entire topic of this committee, because it is committee and appointments and personnel and expenditures and all those things related. I'd like to take it inside and have a fuller conversation. And given that I think that it probably falls under one of the L's, law, labor, litigation, I think we should take it inside and then come out and rise and report in open. And that would be my suggestion, and that would be my recommendation. And if it doesn't happen, that's fine. Then we'll do it here. And I'm quite just as comfortable as anybody else to do it here. But I think we should be inside procedurally. That's my opinion.
Mr. Swaby.
So, Your Worship, I'll leave that totally up to Council. My comments about this are it's now out in the open that Councillor Kipp doesn't want to be on it. Time is of the essence. The committee wants to meet. They aren't able to have a quorum. So I would recommend that you get on with appointing another councillor right now and get on with it. Councillor Kipp has stated his case, and I think if you'd like the committee to continue, then you need to appoint another councillor and get on with it.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I really like that last comment. If you would like the committee to continue, just get on with it. Actually, my thoughts are we've now awarded the contract. We have no say in the design guidelines by Golder. We have no say in the location of the spillway whatsoever. We've given those rights up. We've eliminated them. I would personally like to make a motion to abandon the select committee altogether. It has no power. There is no use to it.
There is a motion.
And if this motion on the floor passes, I will make that motion.
Great. That was my point, was that we need to deal with Councillor Kipp's resignation and then deal with what the future of the
Thank you.
committee is.
Councillor Kipp.
Just to know, I asked over a week ago to be taken off, but I continued my duties by attending the meeting on Monday because I hadn't heard from anyone. So I did continue my duties. And I somewhat take offense to when I read in the paper when people question my duties. Thank you.
Thank you. So, seeing no further speakers on the motion, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, actually, now that we have passed that one, I would like to make a motion to abandon the select committee because of all the reasons I stated before the last motion was made.
Thank you. Just for procedural, Mr. Jackson, shall we hold that for other business?
Yeah, it's council's prerogative, whatever you prefer.
Thank you.
You can do it now.
Councillor Fuller, make the motion, please.
I thought I just did.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Hong, thank you. Discussion. Councillor Fuller, do you wish to speak to it?
No, there's nothing to speak to. It's...
Call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Brennan opposed. Thank you. Next item. Councillor Kipp. Adjournment of a meeting on August 31st.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to know if Council wanted to discuss this issue in an open public forum. I'm very disappointed that stuff went into the paper, onto the TV, that had the media. Are we going to play out this actions we have here at the table, or are we going to continue to concern ourselves? Today there was no challenges to the public, and the meeting went really smooth. We had a couple of outbursts. Previously, we've had 40-minute delays. And I know personally I tried to come up with solutions to that when it was trying to mediate between it, but it was refused. No, they've got to go, they've got to do this. So, and then it almost gets venomous in the newspaper. And when I hear people complaining that we're not getting along or we're not doing it, I don't think going out in the newspaper and saying things. I heard adjourn. I heard the staff be asked about adjournment. I've gone through these 40-minute delays of people being challenged in the gallery, and my job's here at this table, and I'll talk about anything, and I'll try not to take it personal. I'll try to do my best. I'll give my best effort for things, my agreements with myself. But if we're going to run into fighting the public, if we stop signs, there'll be sticks. If you stop sticks, there'll be guns. We hear about crime in our city, and we have 9 or 10 police officers at a council meeting because people are afraid. I mean, I played lots of sports where I fought. I'm not allowed to fight here, so I'm not going to fight. We're allowed to speak. Even sometimes I see councillors on the agenda. Councillor Bestwick, the other meeting, was pointing for his name. But staff gets to speak first. Today, staff spoke over top of a councillor. And you talk about decorum, and you talk about wanting to pull this together. Well, when people sit in the stands here with signs, we go behind and go to their bosses and talk to them. We find this is getting really bad behind the scenes. So we got to play this out here. And if you want to challenge me, Councillor Brennan, about my dereliction of duty like you did in the newspaper.
When did I do that?
It said that we left and it was dereliction of duty. It's right there. Billy Bestwick has the paper.
So we have a...
So do we want to talk about this here? Do we want to talk about this here?
Yeah.
Or do we want to go in camera? Do we want to go away for a weekend? What do we want to do? Because I'm waiting for Heather McKenzie to get back. I'm just, it's so frustrating. The rest of my life is frustrating enough, but to come here and to have that and to, I tried for solutions. And you turned your back when I tried to get the solutions on the 40-minute delay. So it's, and And when I hear people say, oh, this council's dysfunctional, when we vote 5-4, it's not dysfunctional. It's just 5-4. If we vote 6-3, I mean, if it's 5-2. But I do have to grow up too and not try and take it personal, but my God, I'm getting tired, really, of all the innuendo about stuff not happening. Yet we haven't had a budget meeting, we haven't had a strategic planning meeting. We spend more time, we have $6-7 million lawyer bill in the city, and I don't have a lawyer, not counting my bill. So are we going to talk about the adjournment tonight and how that happened? Is it going to continue, or do we go and have a session on it? What do we do? I'm frustrated with it. I'm frustrated having to get up and leave when I'm angry, and in no sense me being here if I'm angry.
Okay.
It's really hard.
We have no motion on the floor, but Councillor Fuller wishes to speak to that, obviously.
Yeah, I really think we need to make a decision on what we're going to do with this, whether we go in camera, whether we discuss it here or there. You all know my opinion. We've had some emails back and forth today, and you know how far I'm willing to go with this if unchallenged. And I think I could crowdsource enough to make a really good challenge on this. I do not want to go there.
Where?
We cherry pick things. Things are being cherry picked all the time. There was a snide comment made toward me tonight. I'm fine with that. People are allowed to make those comments. Do I like them doing it? No. Would I say that person was out of order and kick them out of a meeting for making a comment that they are entitled to make? I'd rather they do it to me personally through email, but if they want it seen on TV, that's fine with me. I have a lot more tolerance, apparently, than many people. And if we really want to get into a discussion on this, I do think we need to get inside. This is not the venue for it.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
I think this is a really good conversation that this mayor and council, it always comes out as council, and which seems to imply 8 people. There's 9 of us, and we all need to accept our share of responsibility for where we find ourselves today. And you have an odd number of people so that votes can be decisive. And whether it's 8-1 or 5-4, it doesn't personify a council of being dysfunctional or functional, frankly. When a vote is made, and we supposedly act upon that. The gentleman to my left and I sat with Councillor Kipp for 3 years, and any significant vote went 6-3 for 3 years. That was functional. We lost every vote. Is what it is. Move on. Now it's 5-4, sometimes 6-3. Is what it is. Move on. I have a real distaste in my mouth when I read comments being made about things that took place that aren't relative to the topic. And one thing that I did learn, which in sport and at the application of sport, when you deal with the media, is you don't throw your teammates under the bus. You don't do that. You can disagree with them. You can dispute with them. You don't have to go out for dinner with them. But one thing you don't do is you don't go after them in the media if you're on the same team. Understandably, we're on the same team. Different views, different opinions. Respectfully, I voted one way, you voted another. Do I go into the newspaper and throw somebody under the bus for how they voted? Or what their interpretation was? Better not. Better not. So when I heard on Monday night, after 12 and a half minutes of mayhem, essentially, Mr. Jackson, this meeting is adjourned. This meeting is adjourned. When I hear that, the meeting's over. There's not a restart button. And I would suspect that if one person in this chamber walked out of the room when they heard that it's adjourned, that you have a duty and an obligation to ensure that that person or anybody else would have 24 hours notice before the next meeting is reconvened. If we said, this meeting will be recessed, we will convene in the boardroom until such time as we have a strategy and the people that are disruptive depart, and then we will conduct our business. I would have stayed. When the buzzer goes on the bench, the game's over. I leave the bench. I don't stick around so the fans can start throwing pop cans at me. I leave. So there was no point for me to stay here. I've been on this council for 10 years. When the meeting's adjourned, I leave. I don't stick around for idle chit-chat. I leave. Did my business. Good night. That's what I heard on Monday night. Thank you.
No further speakers. Call for adjournment. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.